0-5. What the heck is happening with the Nashville Predators? We're going to tell you what is, and almost as importantly, what isn't the problem with the Preds on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this week and this Monday episode, of course, welcoming any first-time listeners who are dropping in to find out what is going on in Nashville. We also want to give that shout out to our everydayers and to our Locked On Predators insiders. We appreciate your support. We love talking Nashville Predators hockey with you most days. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer with Penalty Box Radio. And my friends, you know I have a partner in crime.
Yes, you do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Nashville Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
On today's show, buckle up, friends. We have got to talk about this 0-5 Nashville Predators team that lost for the second time Saturday afternoon to the Detroit Red Wings. We're going to tell you what we heard from a group of frustrated veterans after the game and what Andrew Brunette said after that game that had us nearly shouting, "Amen." We're also going to tell you what we think is and isn't wrong with the team right now. And we're going to give you our storyline of the week. Before we dive into all of that, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, match with Indeed. Okay, Emma. Here we are again. 5 episodes later, 5 game recaps later. Still don't have a win to talk about. Nashville lost 5-2 Saturday afternoon. It was a 3-2 game with less than 2 minutes to go. 2 empty net goals made it seem by a final score that it was a bigger disparity. Goals from Luke Shen and Steven Stamkos. Also, a little bit of trivia. Mark Delgaiso was recalled. He played in the game. Dante Fabro was a healthy scratch. This is, for anyone curious, wondering, the worst start for the team since the 2002-2003 season. We always kick off our game recaps here with one word to describe the game. And because we are limited in the words we can and can't use on the podcast, we have chosen as carefully as possible. Emma, do you want to kick us off with your one word to describe the 5th loss of the season for this Nashville Predators team?
So once again, because it's our show and we make the rules, it's 2 words.
Darn right.
I'm going to say my 1/2 words for the game against Detroit is full 60.
Mm-hmm.
The Predators, it's happened a couple times, but I think we really saw it against Detroit where it was one period that they fell apart, and it was the second period against Detroit. They completely let the Red Wings dictate the pace of the game, and that is where you saw things unravel. And the rest of the game, they didn't look bad, but it was that second period, especially, at the end when they had a 5-on-3. Eventually, they were able to score on that at the beginning of the third period, but it was like, good Lord, you guys. And it was, they were just getting run around in that second period, and that was where it all kind of fell apart. And then again, like you said, the final score, really, it was a 3-2 game, ended up being 5-2 with those 2 empty netters. But yeah, it was, full 60. You got to play the full 60.
Man, my one word is 2 words too, because we're the boss of us. And mine is Showcase Showdown. Those of you who watch The Price is Right, at the end of the show, they have these big showcases, and then 2 contestants bid on their individual showcases, and you have to estimate the actual retail value without going over. And I feel like this game felt like Nashville bid $32,500 when the actual retail price was $32,499. So close, but you get nothing. You get nothing. You don't get the trip to Spain. You don't get the camper, the kitchen appliances, the designer you get nothing. And it's like, man, Nashville, this was a game where we saw you in the ballpark, but you still walked away with nothing. And it was, it's getting tough, y'all. Like, it's getting tough. We, of course, always reach out to our Locked On Predators insiders, a great community, and they are fabulous when it comes to one words and kind of sharing thoughts on what's going on with the game. Matt H said a ton to choose from: vexed, irritated, impatient, but I will go with disgruntled. Matt, we are all so freaking ready to be gruntled with this team. Like, we just want a win. Matt went on to say, if they don't win against the Blackhawks or the Blue Jackets, there's a real good chance they start 0-10 and winless in October. November doesn't get any easier. That's something you and I have talked about, Emma. This October schedule, not an easy start to the season. There really aren't a lot of easy games for the Nashville Predators, especially for a team that is bringing in veterans in key positions and trying to work them in. Preseason didn't give them a lot as far as preseason games, and it's a little rough sledding for returning players on the ice as well, I would say. This isn't just Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea are having trouble getting adjusted. I don't think that's the big problem. I think everybody's having a problem right now.
Yeah, and I don't think they're entirely unrelated either, because it's like this is such a tight-knit team, and the way that this system works, if 2 or 3 guys are off, it really is going to affect the entire team. And so I don't think you can put it on any one person. I really liked the analogy that you had on an earlier episode last week, where you were talking about, it's like they all think they're on a bus, and Steven Stamkos is the only one who knows how to drive the bus. And it's like they're putting all of their effort and their focus into this one thing. We got to figure out this manual transmission. And it's like, no, you know what? We all need to get in our own cars and we all need to just drive together.
Drive your car.
Yeah. And it's getting, it's frustrating. And that would be, if I really did decide to go with just one word, mine would be frustrating, because it's almost more frustrating when you see the potential and you see, it's not just like, oh, that was a horrible game, they played terribly, nothing went right, et cetera, et cetera. I think now it's like, okay, you see it, you can see it, you're seeing flashes of it. And it gets very, very frustrating, because I think that you really don't have an answer for it. Like, a lot of the players that we spoke to afterwards were like, yeah, I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just gets it does get very disgruntling, and we want to be gruntled. I agree with that.
Desperately ready to be gruntled. I think Matt H's word vexed would describe the locker room pretty well. Another insider said sad. That's just how this team makes me feel right now. Dude, it's tough sledding right now to be a Predators fan. You are not wrong. Henry said stammer. Let's talk about that. Steven Stamkos got his first power play goal, got his first goal as a Nashville Predator. So I think that is worth noting. Megan also said ketchup. He grabbed the ketchup, but when he got to the checkout, it was a weird off-brand. That's right. As somebody who lived in Pittsburgh, Heinz is the only ketchup. It's the only way to go. And
Absolutely.
he had some sort of all-natural, no sugar added junk. But yeah. We asked also kind of level of concern. Dustin said he's a 6 out of 10 when it comes to level of concern. Henry said, I love this, Henry. We were all you. I don't know. I was also watching this in the Tennessee game on 2 TVs, and my life was entirely too unmanageable to have real opinions on everything. 100%. Tennessee did get the win over
so
Alabama.
real for that.
Yes.
So real for that, Henry.
So true. This is a one word that I think we need to dive into. Chris's one word is two, because we insiders can do that. Darn right you can, Chris. 2 words are short leash, ? Trotz has invested millions of dollars and his reputation on this roster. The best coaches adapt their systems around the players they have. The system cannot be a be-all, end-all. We are already getting to a point where it's clear that the system may not be suited for this particular group of players, and the coach seems unwilling to adapt. Let's be honest, Emma. This is not the first coach comment out there after the 0-5 start. It's not the first question about the coaching. I do want to push back a little bit on this, because what I will say is I see where you're coming from, Chris, but I also will say we actually haven't seen the team execute the system well yet. And so it might be too early to jump to the system doesn't work with this group of players, because we actually haven't seen this group of players execute it yet with consistency. So it's almost hard to gauge. And I know that come back to that is, well, if they haven't executed it yet, it's because they can't do it. But I'm not sure that's it yet. I think it's too early for that, maybe.
I very much agree. Again, I think back to last year when I admit, and I swallowed my tongue about, after the All-Star break last year, because I was the one saying, I was one of several people saying, you know what? I see what he's trying to do. I see what Brunette's trying to do, but I think that he's, he doesn't have the horses he needs to run the race that he wants to run. And so I'm like, you just, at some point, you just got to give up. You got to move on, try something else. And he proved me wrong. And I gladly, ate crow and came back and said, you know what? I just wasn't patient enough, which is pretty on brand for me. So I think that he, again, after having gone through last year, I do understand the frustration and I understand the temptation to be like, okay, well, clearly this isn't working. What I will say is, yes, it's way too early. I think, again, I've said this before, but two things can be true. A 5-game losing streak, especially to start the season, can be bad. I am not sitting here trying to be like, guys, come on. It's only 5 games. It's not that bad. Like, it's bad for sure.
It's not great.
It is bad. But what can also be true is that it's still not time to panic. And I think that people are looking at this as black and white. It needs to be full panic mode or everything's great. And it's like, no, you know what? Because even after talking to the players, they're the same way. It's like, this freaking sucks. We hate this feeling. Obviously, that's not why we play the game, to lose. We want to start winning some games, and we are trying. This freaking sucks. But we have the faith in this group and this system and this coaching staff that we will be able to turn this around. And that is how I feel about it, is that especially after going through last year and seeing how long it took them to kind of pick it up, it's bad to start and it feels bad and it is bad. But here's another thing that I'll say, and I am so glad. I think Luke Shen was the first player that I've heard say it out loud, which I'm like, thank you for saying the thing, because I've been saying this. He said it, and I think Steven Stamkos said it too later, but Shen was the first one to say it, like, yes, 5 games in a row, it's bad. It feels worse because it's at the beginning of the season and we don't have a win yet. Now, what I will say is 4 or 5 game losing streaks happen all the time. And Stamkos said this, every team goes through this. Every team goes through stretches like this. So if this was happening in December, people might
feel quite like this.
No, people probably wouldn't even notice. I mean, they would notice, but like at least people outside of Nashville wouldn't notice and be like, yeah, happens,
Yeah.
And again, it feels worse. It is bad objectively, but it feels worse because it's at the beginning of the year.
Yes.
And I don't disagree with any of that. I think, but again, you have to put these things into perspective. And it's way too early to be like, if we went through this in December, do you think some people probably still would be, but do you think the overarching cry from the fan base would be fire Brunette? It's not working. No. Like,
No.
you just got to give it a minute.
Yeah.
Got to let them find the Heinz ketchup. Okay? Like, you
Mm.
just need to give them the time. And I'm sure I will not catch any flack for saying this, and everyone who's listening will agree with me. But I do think that we just need to be extra patient.
Yes. Yep. So I agree with you. I think we do have to be a little patient. I think it feels different because they don't have points to look back and go, yeah, but we still have these many points. But we do have to have a conversation about what is going wrong in Nashville. We're going to tell you coming up what we think is and isn't going wrong with this team on this losing streak. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Just like your favorite sports team, we are all driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree. Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and let them know you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Once again, check it out at Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, Emma, whether people are going to love it or hate it, and I think we know there will be plenty of both and some more vocal than others. I agree with you that, let's take a deep breath here. It's not great. It's not great, but it's all is not lost. So let's get to the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about what is and what isn't the problem. And I think what isn't the problem is as important a conversation to have. And here are some things that I think are not the problem. This is not an effort problem. Andrew Brunette said as much. This is not people not trying. This is not people not working hard. This is not people not coming in prepared. I would go so far as to say this is not system and talent problem. Like, no, the system is not jiving right now. And Chris is right in that observation. You don't see the system working right now. And the players are not finishing right now. But I don't think that that is the root of the problem. The other thing that I want to say, and we've seen this a couple times in the YouTube comments, people talking about, well, this is what happens when you try to buy Lord Stanley. First of all, it's not the boogeyman. It's a silver cup. Okay. It's not haunted. He doesn't make decisions. Everybody pays for the Stanley Cup. Everybody pays for the Stanley Cup. Whether you spend years investing money, developing your young prospects, or you go out and you sign somebody like, I don't know, Matthew Tkachuk, and then you win a Stanley Cup. Like, this is not poor general management by Barry Trotz because he just wanted to take a shortcut. It's very difficult to win a Stanley Cup building your team from the draft up. So I want to say that, like, stop with the boogity on that.
And here's another thing too. And I've seen this argument quite a bit where people are saying no team in the history of the NHL has ever started 5-0 or 0-5 and then gone on to win the cup. I'm like, okay, I don't think anyone had picked Nashville to win the cup this year.
No.
Like, I'm sorry. I didn't see that from anyone. So it's like, just because you're not winning the cup this year, now all of a sudden it's a failure. Like, these are the same people who were excited that, oh, now we actually have a window. It's like, no one thought it was happening this year.
Yeah.
Just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Also, last year, Edmonton did things that have never been done before to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. And again, I'm not predicting like Nashville's going to make the Stanley Cup Finals, but I'm saying this season, all is not lost, y'all. All is not lost just because it hasn't been done before. Just chill out with that, okay? Like nobody had been on the moon till the guy got there. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say is not the problem is Andrew Brunette. Andrew Brunette is not the problem. And I know people are like, we need a new coach. At what point do you pull the trigger? Honey, Barry Trotz is not pulling the trigger. It's 5 games in. I am willing to say if they lose 10 straight, Barry Trotz is not firing Andrew Brunette. This is his hand-picked coach. When he had a coach on a contract, like Andrew Brunette I just don't think Andrew Brunette's going anywhere. And I don't think he should. If Andrew Brunette loses his job, that is just to make a statement. That is not because Andrew Brunette's coaching is the problem with an 0-5 start.
Especially after how much turnover there was on the NHL coaching market this past offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And let's all remember, last year he was a Jack Adams finalist. It's not like something happened over the summer and he hit his head and now he's a bad coach. Like that's not what happens. That's not what's going on here. So
No.
I agree with you.
Thank you. So let's talk about some things that we think maybe are the problem. And the first one is something that you touched on earlier in the episode and with your one word, and I will say inconsistency.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say the Detroit game was probably the most consistent we've seen, and it's not enough. It wasn't 60-minute effort. You know, Andrew Brunette post-game, one of the things he said that absolutely jumped out to me is he said, there is no predictability in our game for 60 minutes. And the inconsistency, I think, is what is a major factor in losing these games. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. What else do you think is a problem right now, Emma, with this team?
I think that, and I mean, I think this could maybe lead to some of the inconsistency. I think, one of the biggest things under that umbrella is that it seems like every time they get a lead, they give it right back.
Dude.
And it seems to me that this is more of a between the ears problem. And it's a lot of time. And again, it's not effort. It's not that they're not trying hard. I almost would venture to say that they're trying too hard.
Yes.
And it's a little bit, like, and we talk about this with individual players all the time, like guys who haven't scored a goal, like especially with young players. It's like, well, he's choking up on the stick too much. He's trying too hard to make it happen instead of just letting it happen. And we talk about that all the time on the individual level. I think that applies here on the team level to Nashville right now. I think that they, as a group, they're trying too hard a little bit. And I'm not saying try less, like just don't try, just go out there and treat it like you're playing pickup hockey. But like to a degree, I think that you'd have to rely on what got you to where you are. Like what, last year, the success that got you to where you are, that's what led Barry Trotz to go out and sign these big pieces because he realized, hey, we are that close. We are a couple pieces away. And so you need to understand that, okay, that was a reflection of you, the team, and just keep doing what you're doing. And I think that, we've seen it. We've seen that you can do it. We saw what happened last year and we've seen flashes of it this year too. I think it's just, I don't have the immediate solution to that. I'm like, okay, here's how you fix it. I just think that it really is going to be one of those things. And I've said this before, but it's going to come with time and it's going to suck. It's going to suck before it gets better. And that's what I think a lot of fans need to try to understand too, is that like, it's not gonna immediately get better. Like it's going to be bad before it gets good. And that's okay. That's allowed to happen in an 82 game season. We have the luxury of that being able to happen. And
Yeah.
so again, I see all these things, when Nashville started 0-4. Well, no teams ever started 0-4 and won the cup. Okay, all you people think that because Calgary started 4-0 that the Flames are winning
They're
the
the
cup this
they're
year?
the cup winners now.
Like,
Done.
no, that's not. It's such a long season, and that's why, again, I know it's terrible. You're talking to one of the least patient people on the planet. So I know it's frustrating, believe me. But this is like me talking to myself right now and saying, look, it's such a long season. Doesn't mean that what's happening right now isn't bad. It is bad, but this too shall pass.
Yes. Yes. The other thing that I think is happening that is part of the problem is that players individually aren't going. Your best goal scorer at 5-on-5, Tommy Novak, which look, big fan of Tommy Novak. So, I'm delighted by that. But
And yet
you're,
people are still hating on him. I'm
and
like,
people, I mean, Tommy Novak just can't win. Like, just I really, really hope, and I also believe Tommy Novak doesn't do social media because he don't need that. But you're looking at, Roman Yossi doesn't have a goal yet. Luke Evangelista doesn't have a goal yet. You haven't seen from that top line what you typically see from that top line. And I don't think it's because, well, it was a fluke last year. I just think they aren't going yet. So I think that's part of it. Shooting percentage is dumpster fire. Worst in the league. Friends, nowhere to go but up. Part of it too, and I want to touch on this because this is something that I've just eye tested. I haven't dug into advanced stats on this, but Nashville is not seeing second and third chances on shots. And we saw the Colton Sissons goal was kind of one of those cleanup goals in the Detroit game. And then it got overturned for offside. But those are the goals you need. You need those second and third chances. It's not one shot on goal and then back on defense. Like, you need those second and third chances. And you're just kind of not seeing that from Nashville right now. They are 31st in the league in both goals for and goals against. They're just not going. It's not great. It is not great. The thing I want to ask you, Emma, is there a confidence problem?
I think that's a loaded question because I think that if they take a 10,000-foot view and look at the group that they have and saw what they've done before and the pieces that they've added and, the trust they have in each other, I say no. 10,000-foot view, no, it's not a confidence issue. I think, though, they are humans. And so when things aren't going your way, you'd have to be a robot. Like, I understand that they're professional athletes and you're supposed to be able to block things out and not let it, get to you. And they do have like a mental skills coach who helps them with that. And I believe that there is truth to that. However, they are human beings. They are not robots. And so eventually when things do keep happening this way, yes, it does kind of affect your confidence, not your confidence overall in the group and what you're capable of, but like within a game, yeah, absolutely. Like that rattles you. It
Yeah.
has to. But
Yeah.
I don't think that confidence is the big problem here. I don't think it's the root of the issue. I think it's just kind of a byproduct of what happens within games. Like the whole, you know, getting a lead and then immediately giving it back thing that's got to rock your confidence within games. And I think that's what's leading to some of the inconsistencies that we're seeing within games. But do I think overall that's the biggest problem? Not necessarily. No.
Coming up, we're going to tell you about the post-game locker room vibe, and we're going to share what we heard from some of the veteran players and Andrew Brunette. We're also going to tell you about our storyline of the week. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This is the most wonderful time of the year for sports. Major League Baseball playoffs all underway. NFL is going and the NHL season is kicking off too. The best place to celebrate all of that great sports action is with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. NFL fans, you can kick off your own season with a big return at FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right. Your first $5 bet is going to get you a guaranteed $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. So check out the sports details and this great deal at FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Emma, we have talked about vibes before with this team. I would say the vibes in the locker room after that Detroit loss were decidedly not fresh. They were not good. We got to talk to 3 veterans. We talked to Luke Shen, who, by the way, scored in his 1001st NHL game, which I loved. All of his family was there. He was awarded his silver stick before the game. So I just thought that was wonderful. Steven Stamkos scored his first goal as a Nashville Predator. We also talked with Ryan O'Reilly. I would venture to say they were all visibly frustrated with what is going on. We are still getting to know Steven Stamkos here, covering him, but I would say very frustrated Steven Stamkos. And the comment that kind of stood out to me is he said, "We are a better group than what we're showing." And that this is tough having these losses at the start of the season. And, we touched on this. When you have some points banked already, it's not going to feel as discouraging or season ending or condemning. When you don't have points banked and you've lost 5 in a row, that is tough. What was your takeaway just talking with Steven Stamkos and even with Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Shen? What did you sort of take away from our conversations with those veterans?
Well, I think again, like you said, the frustration was very visible. Another thing that I believe it was Steven Stamkos who said it was like, look, we can't keep saying the same things over and over. And it kind of gives you you can see that they are just as, befuddled and dumbfounded as we are about what's going on right now. So it's like, it's not for lack of effort. It's not for lack of trying. And they're just like, yeah, man, this sucks. And so it's, it's good to see, I mean, not good, but it's, it's a little bit validating almost to see that they are like, yeah, we're trying here and we don't know. Like sometimes you can't explain these things. Again, I mentioned earlier in the show that both Luke Shen and Steven Stamkos commented about how, yes, it's bad, but these things happen. It feels worse because it's at the beginning of the year and we don't have a point yet. For sure, that stings. I think one thing that really stuck out to me that we heard from Ryan O'Reilly is that he said, I forget what the question was. It was about how are you going to, what lessons did you learn in this game against Detroit to apply Tuesday against Boston? And Ryan O'Reilly, Mr. can't get him off the ice at practice, like always first one on, last one off. He said, honestly, I kind of just want to get away from the game for a little bit.
Shocking. Yeah.
And I'm like, but you know what? I get it. Makes total sense. But I think he, like it's when you think about it too. And again, I don't think this is the players making excuses. I am also not making excuses for them, but I think, things that, seasons are not played in a vacuum. You have to think about these things. And one thing I've realized, obviously, they've had a very home heavy schedule to start the season. And I think that does impact you. So I think what's important to remember about having a home heavy schedule. First of all, we remember last year the Predators did not play well at home, at least for the first half of the year. But I think the immediate assumption is to be like, oh, well, it's home ice advantage. You should be playing better. You should be getting these wins. Here's what I will say as someone who traveled with the team for 2 seasons, even for myself, I can say that it's much easier to play on the road.
Yes.
Road games are easier because when you're on the road, that is your only job is to play hockey or for me to cover the game. I don't have to walk my dog. I don't have to go to the grocery store. I don't have to go get gas. Like all these little things that add up that, you know what? No, I'm just here in this city. I get on the bus, I go to the rink, I get back on the bus, go to the airport. That's it.
Yes.
And it's a lot easier to kind of block out those other things. When these guys are at home, they do have to walk the dog. They do have to buy groceries. They have to take their kids to school. There's all these other things that are in play here. And so I think that, again, I'm not making excuses. They're professionals and they know how to, be able to play at home or on the road. But I do think that that's something. I'm not saying that this is causing the 5-game losing streak, but
There's a dynamic, though.
it's certainly not helping. I'll say
No.
that. And I think that, you need to have that kind of like in order to kind of get a reset and recalibrate, I do think you need to get away for a little bit,
Mhm.
whether that's get away from the game, get away from, whatever. And I understand the schedule is not that forgiving, but I think it's good. On Sunday, the players, they have a day off. They don't have practice. They don't have anything. They can just, I think they need that and then get back at it today with practice, tomorrow morning skate, and then the game against Boston. I just think that that is going to be, to try to take advantage of that time away as much as they can.
I also think talking about playing so many games at home, there is pressure
Mhm.
at home because of the expectations, because the home crowd wants to see this team be the team that we expect the moment it was new, 11 a.m. July 1st. And I think the expectations at home are higher and heavier. And yes, they are professionals. They need to be able to win anywhere. But I think that there are dynamics at work that make this challenging. The Nashville Predators have to turn this around. And, this is not an easy week for them to do that. They have Boston, they do have Chicago, and they do have Columbus. They do have one of those games in Chicago. So there is a road game coming up. We'll see what they do with that. But looking ahead to this week, Emma, is there a particular game storyline that jumps out to you that you are looking forward to?
I mean, obviously, we're going to be, Boston comes first. I think people are going to be looking ahead to that game against Chicago. It's a division game.
Mhm.
Again, on paper, Nashville's a much better team, should beat them. But now I think that confidence from the fans is so low now that I
Right.
think that I personally, I'm going to be looking forward to them getting back on the road, even just for one game, because they are back the very next day. They're at home against Columbus. And that's another thing we're going to see is that, yep, that's right, everyone. Scott Wedgwood is coming back. So you are going to see Scott Wedgwood this week in goal. Don't know if it's going to be against Chicago or against Columbus, but you're going to see him because they're not going to play UC Saros back-to-back days. So I think it'll be a good kind of litmus test. Obviously Boston is one of the teams that is, always, seemingly always at the top, in the East. They're always one of the best teams there. I think the bigger test for Nashville is going to be Chicago and Columbus because
Yes.
those are teams that on paper they should beat.
Yes. I agree with that. When I'm looking ahead to this week, I'm looking ahead at the special team storyline because you are looking at, like you said, Boston, Chicago, and Columbus. Interestingly, Boston right now, 20th on the power play, 14th on the penalty kill. Chicago, 6th on the power play, 7th on the penalty kill, and Columbus, 24th on the penalty kill. I am looking forward to seeing what can this Nashville Predators team do on special teams Can they contain, this humming Chicago, which, who would have thought this Chicago power play, can the penalty kill continue to be effective? And also, you've got Steven Stamkos' first power play goal. Can Nashville build on that momentum? So for me, special teams is going to be something that I am watching for this week coming up. And it's, of course, going to be something that we're going to be following as we preview and recap another 3-game week for the Nashville Predators. Yes, still looking for their first win. They are 0-5, but let's see what they can do. On tomorrow's show, we are going to preview that Boston game. We're going to dive into these two teams, their stats, and tell you some keys to that game as well. Before we sign off for this Monday, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. That's going to do it for this Monday episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back tomorrow with that Boston Nashville preview. We'll see you then.